Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be something a little bit different. This is going to be my experience working at Sephora. Now, a couple things I want to get out of the way right off the bat. First of all, this is going to be more of a rant video. This is going to be a negative video talking about my experiences with the company. Also, this video is going to be very long. If you didn't already notice that from the timestamp for this video, it's going to be a long one. So if you're just going to comment and say like that I talk too much or whatever, then you don't need to be watching this video. I'm sorry if that sounds rude, but it's true. If you don't like videos just like sitting down and talking, you're not going to like this video. So if you're not going to like that, definitely click off of this video right now. So for those of you who may not know, if you're new to my channel or this is the first video of mine that you're seeing, I worked for Sephora for just under a year as a skincare consultant. I'm not going to be saying what location I worked at or mentioning any names. I've been debating making this video for quite a while, basically since I left the company back in March, but I just wanted to give it some time and kind of distance myself from it. I had a very negative experience working there, and I just really wanted that distance. Right now I feel like I'm in a place where I'm happy and I'm happy with what I'm doing, so I feel like I'm finally going to be able to talk about what happened. And part of the reason I'm making this is because whenever I mention the fact that I didn't like working at Sephora, I'm automatically hit with a ton of questions, because I feel like for a lot of us kind of like young beauty junkies, Sephora is a very coveted job. Like, it seems like such an amazing dream job. You get the discount, you get all these free products, you get to be surrounded by all these like amazing brands. And for a lot of people it is. I do know lots of people love working for Sephora and it is like their dream job, but this is just my personal experience. And I do know some people have had similar experiences to me. So I just want to kind of put this out there to show you guys that it might not be everything that you think it is. So basically when I started working for Sephora, I loved it for the first couple months. I had just come out of another really bad job in cosmetics working at Hudson's Bay in their cosmetic department, and it was like a breath of fresh air. I loved working there for the first couple months. Basically, long story short, right when I was starting to work there, the manager that had hired me was going on maternity leave, and they were bringing in another manager from one of the stores, and I think this is where kind of all the issues started to happen. Because I mean, when I started at Sephora, it seemed like a really positive environment. Now, I can be quite naive. I think a lot of us can be quite naive. When you start a job, you think, oh wow, everyone gets along, we're all so happy, there's no drama here. But that was kind of my impression when I started. Once again, I don't know if that was my naivety or things were just genuinely better. I think at least to a point things were a lot better and a lot more positive before this kind of changeover happened. So basically when this new manager came over, she started trying to basically make a lot of big changes, and some of these were coming from higher up in the management, like the district manager and stuff like that, but they were clearly making a lot of really big changes. And this manager actually came from a different location in my city, a different Sephora, where they have kind of a reputation for having really bad customer service. Like, I have friends who work in the mall where that Sephora is, and they will go out of their way to not shop there and go to a different location because the staff can be pretty nasty there. And basically after this manager started working at the store, I used to joke and be like, now I see why that store sucks so badly, because everyone there is miserable. The main issues that I had working at Sephora stemmed from the management team. A lot of the girls and guys that I worked with there I really loved. I have some people that I worked with who are really great friends, but the management is what really made my experience there really shitty. I'm a big believer that the people you work with really make or break your experience. Like, even if you're doing a crappy job, if you work with amazing people, it can be really great. For me, Sephora was the opposite. The job was amazing, but the people I worked with really made it a horrible experience for me. So keep in mind when I'm saying manager throughout this video, Sephora stores kind of all have like a team of management. So I'm not talking about one specific person every time. This is going to be kind of a large group of people. So to start off, one of the things that I really hated about Sephora was that the managers expect you to act like Sephora is your entire life. Like, it is your be all, end all, the reason you are alive on this planet. And they really just want it to be your entire life, and it's like you're paying someone like $11 for like a minimum wage job. They're not going to act like it's your entire life, especially when you create such a hostile environment. It was extremely difficult to get time off, especially. Like, I remember at one point last fall, I was moving. So I had booked 5 days off because I was moving, and in between houses I literally had nowhere to stay, so my family was going to my vacation house. And the management team there made me feel so horrible and so guilty about it. I was like, I literally have nowhere to stay, and they made me feel so bad about it. And afterwards, after that, they gave me like shitty hours the entire time I worked there, which I know seems like it's probably a coincidence, but the people who work there are definitely the kind of people who would purposely, vindictively give you crappy hours because you like wronged them or whatever. At Sephora, there's like an online online program where you like book your time off and everything. I've never had a situation like that at a job before. You know, I've always just had jobs where they were like, oh, just write your name on this day on the calendar or whatever and we'll give you this day off. So naturally, I went on this online program. I booked off my days that I needed off or whatever, and then there's like a little section where you can write the reason that you need that time off. So I wrote like, hey, I'm moving, I have nowhere to stay for this week, and I thought that that was all good, but then they pulled me into the office and they were like, you can't just write it down on the website, and they just made me feel like so bad about it. Like they told me like, oh, you can't just like book it off on there and expect to get it off, you have to talk to us too. And I was like, I thought that was the whole point of the website, like that was the whole way you requested it off, and they were just really rude about it. Also, this didn't happen to me in particular, but apparently at Christmas last year, it was in December, and a couple of girls that I worked with booked a day off for a funeral, and they were denied that day off to go to a funeral, which I just think is like so ridiculous. Like, I don't care if it's like the holiday time and the store is really busy. There was like 70 people working there, and they denied someone a day off for a funeral. Like, I think that is just so incredibly wrong and insensitive. And with the moving thing too, I had literally moved a few months prior to that, and I'd only been working there for like 2 months, so I didn't book off any time for that moving period. Like, I just did it all on my days off and got it done, and I was like super exhausted. So I thought the fact that I was booking off like a few days to move when I literally had nowhere to live wouldn't be that big of a deal. Another thing was that the managers at my Sephora were never really present. Now at Sephora, there's kind of like slang terms for everything. Like the back room is called backstage, on the floor is called on stage, stuff like that. And the managers at Sephora were never on stage. They were always in the backstage. You would very seldomly actually see the management team. Like basically every hour at Sephora, there's a certain manager that's kind of like running the floor, but they're not able to help clients. And like, I was a supervisor at one of my jobs. I understand that there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of responsibilities and stuff, but even when I was a supervisor, I would take the time to like get out there with my staff and like do the dirty work and stuff and the jobs that no one really wanted to do, because I just wanted to be relatable. I wanted my staff to know that I just knew what they were going through, basically. And I just don't like that. I don't like when managers have no idea what's actually going on and they don't have to experience it for themselves. I don't think that's fair that they don't have to deal with that. And there's a picture here that I really love that I'm actually going to insert now, because I think it really sums up the kind of Sephora dynamic and the difference between a really good work environment and a negative one. So yeah, that's how I feel. I feel like the managers at Sephora are bosses and they're not leaders. Like, they just sit in the back all day and they don't experience like the crappy retail life that all of us had to deal with, and they really didn't understand when we would be having an issue with a client or whatever, and it just made them really unrelatable. Like, they expected you to come up to them if you were having like a bad day or whatever and like tell them what was going on, but like they just distanced themselves from us so much that it was like impossible to do, and I never felt comfortable talking to anyone on the management team because of that. The next thing I want to talk about was an incident that really got on my nerves, and this was a fairly regularly occurring thing for me at Sephora. Basically, around the time that I started, Sephora was rolling out a new skincare service that was like a mini facial that we would do at like the beauty studio or whatever. And at the time they were like just rolling it out. Like, it wasn't advertised anywhere. No one really knew about it. So it was kind of difficult to get customers to sit down and do it. So one day I had only been working for about 2 hours and I went backstage to just like grab something or whatever. And it was like a really busy day. Like, there was tons of people in the back on breaks. There was like brand representatives there was managers, there was just like tons of people. Like, the back room was packed. And so I'm like standing at the sink washing a beauty blender or whatever, and the manager is kind of like across the back room from me, sitting in the office talking to a brand representative. And she literally yells across the back room, "Sari, how many mini facials have you done today?" And like I said, I hadn't been there that long that day, so I responded and said like, "Oh, I've only done one so far," which was true. And then seriously, in the most like loudest, like patronizing, just nasty voice ever, the store manager calls out and she says, "Well, so-and-so has already done 3 today, so you need to start trying a little bit harder." I was honestly just like speechless. I was like what? Like, it was so rude, so insensitive. Even talking about it now, like almost a year later, it makes me so upset. Like, I start to shake and it's just awful. Like, I'm a really sensitive, really quiet person, and I really hate like confrontational situations. They just make me really nervous, and I really hate being called out in front of people like that. And the fact that she just did that in front of like everyone really embarrassed me. I just felt extremely degraded. I just do not deal well with situations like that, and I just was so shocked at how insensitive she was. I I think a good boss takes the time to understand that people have different styles that they like to be talked to in. Like, if you're unhappy with my work or whatever, I want you to pull me aside and talk to me in private and not scream it out for everybody in the store to hear. And there was just none of that at Sephora. There was no management trying to understand how you like to be talked to or understand like more about your personality. It was just like non-existent there. That's just something that still really bothers me, and that was definitely not the only time that there were situations like that where they just called people out in front of everyone, and it was just like really horrible. Like, I just don't understand why someone would do that. Now, the next point I want to talk about is going to be a very interesting one, and this is management only wanting us to help customers that look like they're wealthy and look like they're going to spend a lot of money. And this was not everybody at my Sephora location. This was only like a few select people that acted this way. I have to preface this a little bit. If you have ever been in a Sephora, you may have noticed that all of the employees wear like a little headset or earpiece, and we use this to communicate with everyone in the store. So when you call out something into your little microphone, everybody who's wearing a headset that's turned on can hear what you say. So for people who work in the color department of Sephora, which is just like the kind of makeup side of things, basically, you have to call out into the headset when you're going to be helping someone, and say you're going to be doing like a mini makeover on them or whatever, and there is a time limit for how long you can spend with people, usually about 15 minutes. So if someone working in color had like someone who was wanting to try on a foundation or whatever, they'd call it out and basically ask for permission to make sure the store wasn't too busy or anything and make sure they had time to do this. So someone would call into their headset and be like, hey, I'm just sitting down with this client for a quick foundation, mini makeover, whatever. And there were times when certain managers would call out, and I'm not even joking you, they would say, okay, but don't spend too much time with that client. They don't look like they're going to spend a lot of money. Like, what? That is just mind-boggling to me. Like, that is someone making a snap judgment based on how a client looks, like if they are dressed nice or if they have a basket in their hand with products, and it's just basing it solely off of how they look. Like, that is just so not fair. It is not fair to look at someone and say this person doesn't deserve our time because they don't look like they're going to spend money. Now, Sephora really conveys this message that clients are the top priority, and as sales consultants, it's like your job to go out of your way to make their entire day and be the best part of their day and everything like that, which is a lovely idea if it's actually being implemented, but when you are judging clients like that, it kind of all just goes out the window. I just think that it's so disgusting and so judgmental, and once again, there was lots of incidences of this happening, but that was kind of just like the most like direct example, but there was lots of subtle things where managers would just like hint to you that like you shouldn't spend much time with that person, or like we can't make a new tester of this product because they're not going to buy it. Like, just stupid stuff like that. Now, I know that I'm really stereotyping here, but from my experience working in cosmetics, I find the people who spend the most money, honestly, are the people that you don't expect to. The people that are dressed in like normal clothes, like a hoodie and jeans and stuff, and then the people who are carrying a $2,000 handbag are the ones that cringe and act like appalled when you show them a $60 eye cream. So you really can't judge people based off of their looks. Like, honestly, I've had someone come in hunting gear and spend like $600 on bath bombs at Lush, and then I've had someone wearing like an Hermes bracelet turn down like a $50 cleanser. Like, you really don't know, so to just look at someone and dismiss them like that, I think is just so unfair, especially when these are the people who are supposed to be leading the company and supposed to be in charge of like the day-to-day operations. I just think that's so not cool. I also had an incident with a manager referring to a certain race as being dirty and unhygienic in the back room to a bunch of us employees. And she wasn't using racial slurs or anything, but the racism there was very strongly implied, and everybody like laughed along or whatever, and I was just like so disgusted. I was just sitting there like, what the hell? I'm not going to get into a ton of detail about that situation because it just pisses me off, and there was other kind of like hints of like racism from management as well, which Sephora has a set of values. A lot of large companies do, but unlike other big companies, Sephora actually really like brings up these values and makes them like a big topic of conversation on a regular basis, and one of them is respect for all. And this manager who made this really racist comment about a certain race being dirty and everything, she had recently just talked about how we need to use inclusive language and everything, so to make sure we're not like offending other staff members. And then she goes ahead and says that, and it's like, hey, you don't know who you are offending. There was an incident as well where I just posted like kind of like an upset Facebook status. It wasn't anything particular, it's just like a very like vague status. And someone that I worked with commented and said like, me too, Sephora really sucked today or whatever, and I got like a big slap on the wrist for that. Like, they pulled me into the office and they were like, you really need to be careful about how you're using social media. Meanwhile, one of the managers was liking like a picture, like a meme, talking about how much they hate their job, and it had like racial slurs and stuff on it too, so nothing ever happened to them about it, so that was kind of stupid. And aside from all of these issues, there was just a lot of drama and a lot of conflict and a lot of very passive-aggressive behavior. Now, I really hate passive-aggressiveness, like, more than anything. Like, I know I said I hate confrontation, and I do, but I hate people who are passive-aggressive even more. Like, if you have an issue with me, like, just come up and say it to my face. Don't, like, beat around the bush and try and, like, embarrass me in front of other people. It's just stupid. Like, it's so petty. So many of the people there were just so petty and immature. It was awful. And because of the many incidences like the ones I've described in this video, I really ended up hating Sephora. It became a really all-around negative experience to me. Like, really the only reason I stayed there as long as I did was because of all the free product, which sounds really bad, but like, you get so much free product. I have a whole video about how that works too, which I'll have linked. But yeah, that is just a tiny peek into my experience at Sephora and why I always say that I had a negative experience there, because I get so many questions about it. And I just want to say I wasn't the only one experiencing this at my Sephora location. Around the time that I quit, like over the span of probably like 4 months, a ton of people quit. And like, it was people who had been working there for like years, even for some of them. So it wasn't just me being like overly sensitive or anything. I know that a lot of other people were experiencing the same things I was, and it just became a really hostile environment because of the management there. But anyways, that kind of wraps up this video. Take this video with a grain of salt. Like I said, this is just my experience here, and I don't think that all of the things I talked about in this video represent Sephora as a whole. Like I said, some people love working at Sephora. It's like their dream job, but this was just my personal experience and the things that I know some other people have went through working for the company. Who knows, maybe someone the higher up from Sephora will see this and maybe some positive change will happen and Sephora will become a more positive environment for the employees. But I just really wanted to get this out there and just share my experience and let you guys know that Sephora isn't always all that it's cracked up to be. I don't know if I should say I hope you guys enjoyed this video, because that's kind of weird, but maybe if you're like wondering about working at Sephora or whatever, it'll help give you a little bit of insight about what kind of things really go on like behind the scenes there. But I guess give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it, and subscribe to my channel as well for all of my future videos, and I will talk to you in my next video. Bye guys!